Hey everyone, welcome back to the Going Scared podcast. This is your host, Jessica Honegger, founder of the social impact fashion brand, Noonday Collection. Join me here every week for conversations on living lives of purpose by leaving comfort and going scared. All right, as most of you know, I've spent the last 2 years with our house under construction, and I cannot tell you how much joy it brought me to start off a new year in a house that we are not going to work on. It's pretty much done. So last year, my husband and I lived in the front yard in an Airstream for most of the year. Needless to say, cooking eventually went out the window. And when it came time to move back into our house and use our beautiful new kitchen, I seriously didn't know what to do. I was like, tacos? Well, I told you guys about it on Instagram, and a million of you tagged Fed and Fit. Everyone said you've got to go follow Fed and Fit. She will solve all of your what the heck do I cook tonight needs. So I gave Cassy Joy a call, and Cassy Joy Garcia, she is a San Antonio native along with me. So we have a shared love of Mexican food, which really worked out. Cassy is on a mission to simplify wellness through quick and tasty recipes, unbiased, easy to understand nutrition and fitness advice, and simple swaps for safer home and beauty. Her most recent book, Cook Once, Eat All Week, is a revolutionary way to get a delicious, healthy, and affordable dinner on the table fast. We have such a great conversation. It's super practical. You're going to want to get a pen out. I have her walk us through a really basic meal. I have her cookbook. I've used it. Actually, I bought it for my husband for Christmas because he actually does most of the cooking in the family. So it was my gift to help him create a more efficient evening. I absolutely love Cassy Joy, and you will hear just what kindred spirit she is. She truly lives up to her name of joy. It's so great to be able to approach fitness and health in the new year. I am someone who has given up big, audacious goals and tried to live a lifestyle of eating and exercise only for the outcome of what the scale says or how I look. It truly is a journey now. It is a lifestyle for me. And what that means is sometimes we get off and we got to come back to center. And Cassy really shares that approach. I know you're going to get a lot out of today's conversation. I'm curious, what's your whole take on New Year's resolutions?
You know, I am pretty lukewarm in either direction. I will support folks who want to make them and folks who are, there's polar opposites, right? There's folks that are really into their New Year's resolutions and they really charge forth with them and they plan and they make a detailed crafted forecast. And there's folks who are so anti New Year's resolution because they're like, I'm just going to be me, more me, right, in the new year. And I think both are great. I'm happy to support folks in either direction. Sometimes I make them and sometimes I forget and I blink and, it's almost February.
It's never too late. Well, I think so many people, food, this sounds so silly, but food is an essential in our lives. Mm-hmm. And it's an essential part of our humanity and our relationships and even our relationship with ourselves. And it's such a massive conversation because on one hand, it's so important to literally and figuratively be at the table together. But at the same time, the food at that table may not be serving our bodies well. So I just wanted to hear what got you started on your journey of nutritious blogger and now business owner.
So my story started about a little over 10 years ago. I can't believe we're at the decade mark. Goodness.
Crazy.
Time flies. But a little over 10 years ago, I was fresh out of college and knew it all, right? Because I was 22 and had life and the world figured out. And I couldn't figure out why. I didn't realize that I was sleepy and my joints hurt and I had constant headaches and mental fog, right? I thought that was just me settling into adulthood. I didn't realize that those could be indicative of the fact that maybe I wasn't nourishing myself very well. And so but that aside, I also felt like, well, the thing that we do when we graduate from college is we try to shed off, whatever pizza and beer had piled on during my college years. And so I started dieting and really threw myself into a bunch of these yo-yo diets, and none of them truly served me, right? Like what I thought I was looking for. And I would lose weight and then I'd come back up. And a lot of this, I had a lot of body dysmorphia I was struggling with at
Mm.
that point in time, right? Thinking that my worth was really in how I looked and the size of the pants that I was
Mm.
wearing. And thank goodness. I mean, it's really neat to tell the story and think about it, just thinking about where I am now and who and how heavy that was to carry then and live that every day. And anyways, diets just kept failing me, right? These very, very restrictive 30 days, you're on or you're off, and then I'd yo-yo right back. It just kept it didn't really solve what I thought I was looking for. And who knows what I think my heart was searching for something more and I didn't know what that,
Mm.
couldn't put my finger
Mm.
on it. So I thought about it professionally. I was pursuing health and wellness. I was curious about nutrition and eventually I thought, well, I kind of a smart cookie. If I just think for myself, maybe I dig into the literature, maybe I can figure out what is the right thing for me to do. I'll take myself on as my first experimental client. And so I dug into some of the nutrition science research available back then, and I discovered this concept of inflammatory foods and anti-inflammatory foods. And that was just enough for me to wrap my head around the fact that, oh my goodness, if inflammation is, the root of all disease, and if I can help impact and reduce inflammation in my body, maybe I'll feel better and see what happens. So that's what I did. And I just swapped foods on my plate. I didn't restrict. I just said, I'm going to eat more anti-inflammatory foods and reduce the ones that are probably causing inflammation, inflammatory oils and um, grains and really refined sugars, right? Fake sugars, a lot of those things that just we don't realize maybe causing a little bit of inflammation. And because I was consuming so much, it was a lot. So I switched over in about between 6 and 9 months, which is a nice long time. And I love that it took that long because it shows that it was real work and my body was really changing. My headaches went away, my mental fog really cleared. I had more energy than ever before. The pain in my knees and my hips went away. And I thought that that was going to be a life sentence. I really did. And so it was amazing. And of course, my body composition changed, but by that point, I didn't care.
Mm.
That's not what I was chasing anymore. So folks asked better questions about what I was eating, and I went online to share some of the recipes. Other people eventually found me after my mom and dad were reading my website for about a year and a half, and I got that third reader and so asked some great questions. So I went back to become a certified nutrition consultant and then tried to walk folks through just some of those lessons learned that I had to go the long route through. Wanted to help folks, really see the forest through the trees.
Wow. So did you go to any healthcare professionals during that time, or were you just really like, I want to optimize how I feel? And like, did you ever get, like a food allergy diagnosis or anything like that?
I didn't. It was all very experimental in terms of, I'm just going to stop eating. Now they have a name for it. Back then, I really struggled to describe it. Now they kind of call it an elimination diet, right? Where you just eliminate big categories of foods. Now, honestly, if I thought about it that way back then, I probably still would have thrown me into this diet cycle mindset.
Right.
But you eliminate these foods and then you introduce them a little bit at a time. So corn is a great example because I eat a good amount of corn now. And I didn't then because it was a grain and I thought I'm just going to eliminate and see how drastically I can reduce inflammation. And then, you can't live in San Antonio like we've been saying for too long without those corn chips,
No.
those
Oh
corn
my
tortillas.
word.
So that was the first one I reintroduced and I handle it just fine. So,
Oh, I bet you were very glad about that.
oh yes, hallelujah. Between that and the dairy, I was like,
Oh,
I'm
good.
good. I'm set for life.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So I just want to hear a little bit more because it's just interesting that you did this on yourself and you didn't kind of go seek out, I think so many people now go get tested or go get this or go that, but you
Mm-hmm.
really had this intuition. Like you decided, you know what, my body's to be trusted. I talk about this a lot. I talk about dieting culture a lot, and I have a whole chapter in my book about body image, which was kind of like shocking to people because they're like, this is a business book. I don't understand. But it's because this affects, I think 95% of women say that they would like to change something about themselves. And, people aren't in general happy with where they are in their bodies. So I've been on a long journey, still on it. Wish I could say it was over, but it's not. Some of it is just the travel. When I start traveling and I kind of get off my normal rituals. But part of me going on this journey was learning to trust my body, because a diet says, don't trust your body. Like just follow these rules, and diets try to be one size fit all. Like follow these rules, do this, and this will happen. So how do you think you learned how to trust yourself enough to say, I'm going to just listen to my body? Because 6 months that's a pretty long time to kind of stick with something.
It is. This is also part of my personality. I am one of those very much a busy hands or happy hands kind of person. And at that same point in time, so intuitive eating, right, is eventually what I got to, getting to that point where I went from thinking somebody else had all the answers, had a playbook of my body and what my body needed and what it was telling me, to understanding in my mind. I understood in theory, I guess, that my body actually knows me best, right? I know me best. And then living that out took a lot of practice. So that was that really long time frame. And so to help me get there, I did a couple of things. I busied myself with work and studies and school, and I got really involved. At the same time I picked up a new exercise routine, and I'm by no means someone who is just a natural athlete or just really drawn to the gym. But I wanted to do something different that challenged me, that kept my mind off of the fact that I wasn't on a diet, because I needed a distraction. So I did that. And then also as a way to kind of get out of my head or get some of my thoughts and interpret what my body was telling me on paper so that I could then understand them. It's like I needed a mediator, right? I needed someone to sit here and say, oh, you are thirsty at 2 p.m., or you think you're hungry at 2 p.m. Maybe it's that you should have eaten a little bit more at lunch, or maybe you're thirsty, right? I needed a mediator to be able to help me negotiate and figure that out. So I journaled a lot. And I was very careful, because it's a slippery slope if you have a history of disordered eating, right? Journaling. I ate 27 raspberries for breakfast, right? I didn't want to write quantitatively what I was eating, but qualitatively, right? If I went to the Italian restaurant down the place from my office and I ordered a small chicken salad, but I was hungry before dinner and was eating things that didn't serve me very well, it probably means that I should have doubled the meat on that salad, right? And I could have added some olive oil to it. And so I just really learned, or if I felt great at a workout one morning, I would go back through and I'd think, well, what did I eat yesterday? And I'd figure out, you know what, I had a giant sweet potato for lunch and I felt awesome in my workout. And I didn't have any weird, crazy inflammation. That helped me build a little mini playbook that was custom fit to myself, so that I could then really start to trust my body will tell me what I need when I need it.
It takes a lot of courage, I think, to begin to trust yourself and believe that your body, like every single one of our bodies, is so unique and individually made. And I love this idea that we can each go and create our own playbook for how we can optimize the best way to eat for ourselves, which is not the message out there. The message out there is follow this, follow that, follow that. What advice do you give people who want to have a healthier relationship with what they eat? Like what's sort of that beginning journey?
The beginning journey is really to do what I just described. I tell folks to focus on, funny enough, the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to feeling well is that we actually rest well enough and we hydrate well enough. And then the food, the things that we're actually chewing on, that actually becomes, it's important, but it's not as important as the other two, because you can misinterpret, right, what your body needs in terms of nourishment if we're exhausted or if we're dehydrated. And so those two are pretty easy, right? We can be really on top of, well, easy, air quotes. I now have a daughter and a puppy in the house. And so sleep isn't always that easy, but we can try to tackle and prioritize rest, and we can prioritize hydration. And so I would tell folks, it sounds a little backwards, but I would say prioritize that. Get on top of your hydration and do your best to get solid rest at night. And that's going to be individual. The amount of water you need and the amount of rest you need is also custom fit to you, right? Whatever you works best for your life. And then start dealing with foods and eat the foods that you're curious about. If you find yourself thinking about a spinach salad and you're like, that's silly, who thinks about a spinach salad? But every once in a while, I feel like we all kind of gravitate towards something like that. Pomegranates, citrus, right? Those kinds of things. Then go ahead and give your body that food and see what happens. And so I would say lean into those curiosities and different kinds of foods. And also, if you want a cupcake, have a cupcake, right? I don't think that that single piece of indulgence isn't, or even if you have it daily, it's all okay. It doesn't mean that that's who you are. It's just something that you ate. And I think disassociating food with who you are and becoming a future who you are with, it's just something I did and I'm moving on, and it's a decision I powerfully made. I know it's not going to make me feel great. I know it's going to make me probably want to crave more sugar, and that's okay, but I'm making that decision. I think that really helps demystify the whole thing, right? When we understand the impact of food on our bodies.
Gosh, it's so true. Okay, tell me this, because we all have these great intentions, and probably at this time of year, everyone is, a little bit more watching themselves because that's the nature of a new year, a new decade. But then we go to the wedding, or we stress eat one afternoon, or we eat the popcorn, or we get the chips and the queso and the margarita, which is my downfall. And then
Sounds wonderful.
But then we just keep doing it. You know what I mean? Or,
yes.
I have it's a very social eating. If I just never left my house or my routine, honestly, I'd be a ninja. When I'm in routine, I can follow routine, but then suddenly I go to a party or I start traveling and I'm like, well, I'm missing out if I don't eat that. And then that's where I lose all of my ground. So how can we prepare ourselves for that mentality of just picking it back up again, the healthy eating?
Oh, that's a great topic. There's a couple hacks you can keep in your back pocket. Number one is, I would say, let's say if you have a super indulgent weekend and you're really afraid that you just put something in motion that you're going to have a hard time stopping, right? Maybe it's this mindset around, I ate a piece of the pie and I'm going to go ahead. This is our subconscious, right? I'm not saying that anybody consciously thinks these thoughts, but I ate a piece of that pie and I'm going to go ahead and punish myself by eating the whole thing, eating the rest of it. I'm going to just commit to this thing. Or we create this chips, guacamole, margarita, constant twirl. I think that if we see ourselves stepping into a routine like that, we're putting something in motion that we don't know how we're going to stop. I would say try to stay, again, I hate to be so cheesy with this, but I would just say try to drink a whole bunch of water if you can. And I'm not talking a crazy amount of water. I'm saying take your body weight, divide it by 2, and that's the number of ounces. So if you weigh 160 pounds, then that's about 80 ounces of water a day is a rough starting point. And if you're not at that point any clear or close to that number at all, then just slowly work yourself up to it. But there's something that happens with our willpower magically when we actually do have enough hydration. And so at least put that piece of armor on in front of yourself when it comes to willpower. And then number 2, if you're going out into a social situation, heading to a party or heading to the wedding, heading out for, more guacamole, and that you're probably going to, there's a high likelihood of overindulging to the point that you're not going to feel great afterwards, maybe eat something before you go. It spoils the fun a little bit because there's nothing more fun than sitting down thinking about Tex-Mex now that we might just have to cancel dinner plans and just go get it. But there's nothing more fun than sitting down at the dinner table, when you're really hungry and that first super satisfying chunk of guacamole on your chip. That's great. And I want you to have that. But if you feel like this is a runaway train that you're possibly on, go ahead and eat something small and nourishing before you go out. So you're not quite as ravenous when you sit down. So I would say those things: snack ahead of time and then make sure you're really hydrated. And also have a conversation with yourself. If you're feeling guilty about something, or if you've been doing a lot, let's say it is a lot of travel, you've been doing a lot of travel, give yourself some grace around that, right? And some space, and say, this is such a neat thing I get to do, and I don't want to miss out. Like, I'm one of those believers that there's a lot of culture we can enjoy through food, and that is such a really, really neat opportunity to take part in. And so just powerfully choose it. I choose this, or I choose not to do this thing. And then whatever it is that you've aligned yourself with, stick with that.
I love those words. I choose, or I choose not to. Like, even the power of being able to say that out loud, because I think those of us with sort of food issues and disordered eating, it does feel like food is your master and not like you're the master of it. I mean, that's like the constant thing to be overcoming, whether it's denying yourself of food, that gives it a lot of power, or whether you're overindulging in food, which again is that like feeling like you're being controlled by it. But to be able to like take back that control and be like, I'm going to choose here. I love that. Those are good. And my husband, he is the biggest believer in hydration, girl. He is always, I tell you, if I'm like coughing, or if I'm like have a fever, I mean, he's always just like, have you drank your water today? Have you drank your water? I mean, he will. I mean, he will just like come up to me with a glass of water. He thinks it's like solves everything. And I am an underhydrator.
It's so funny. I'm the same way. My poor husband, whenever he's like, I think I have a headache, I will come to him with a giant glass of water. And he's like, I'm fine. I'm hydrated, but thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about eating healthier and money and meals and planning and all of the things. Like, and what's interesting is people that tagged you and were saying like, you got to go find this recipe. It actually was not about health. So you really have a brand that's built on just good food.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. I'm really glad. That was my goal.
Well, you've done it, because that's absolutely how I perceived you to be. So I didn't even know we were going to just talk a ton about health. I thought we were talking about like meal planning and all this other stuff. But yeah, so how do you go about, because that's where I am. And especially after getting back in the kitchen, after having been out of the kitchen, my husband and I share kind of cooking duties, quote unquote, but we do have family meals together pretty much every evening of the week. How do you go about doing it, and what are your go-tos?
When nutrition was the first riddle I solved professionally, well, air quotes solved, right? That was the first one I took on. I would say that getting dinner on the dang table was the next one, because it was such a challenge. It was a challenge for me. It was a challenge for my readers. I remember thinking, it shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this hard.
Right? It's like people have been doing this since the beginning of time.
Exactly. Why is it this hard? I feel like I'm spending an inordinate amount of time planning my meals, and then I spend a fortune on the groceries, right? And then I'm spending a bunch of time during the week, and I love to cook. This is not a person who doesn't like to spend time in the kitchen, but I felt like I was spending too much time in the kitchen cooking, trying to get dinner on the table, and I was missing out on other parts of my life. And then if I meal prepped, let's say I did a traditional meal prep, and I would spend all this time and all this energy on a weekend, putting out a big chunk of meals, right? Well, I'd make it all. I'd invest in it, the time and the money, and then come Wednesday, I'm sick of the food I made. And then I'm feeling guilty about the fact that maybe I ignored it a day too long and now it's wasted. Or I would, I'd say, let's do pizza anyways, to my poor husband. So it didn't make sense to me why it was so hard. And it seemed like it was a very common problem. So I researched. It sounds like a really silly thing to research, but I spent years researching meal prep and trying to figure out a way to better.
Really? So you're a professional meal prepper. Wow.
I guess you could say that. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I wonder what my hours are, if I've hit that 10,000 hour mark yet on meal prep stuff, but I did. So my second book is all about meal prep and about how to do it differently. And really what I wound up doing was people who are super comfortable in the kitchen. I'm thinking of my mom when I say somebody like that, right? She will roast a chicken on Sunday, and then she opens up the fridge on Monday, And she looks at what's in her refrigerator and she says, "Oh, I've got chicken and grapes and some pecans and maybe some mayo," right? So she says, "Oh, I'll make Sonoma chicken salad." There's no planning that goes into it. She just kind of repurposes the food that's already there. And so I thought, what if there's a way to systematize that concept of repurposing the things that are already there? And so that's where this Cook Once Eat All Week stuff came from, that I'm sure is what folks are tagging you in. So we did that. We took a main protein, a main veggie, and a main starch. You cook those in bulk, and then you assemble them into 3 totally different dinners. So I'm not going to make you eat Tex-Mex 3 days in a row, but you could if you wanted. But 3 totally different cuisines. You're not going to feel like you're eating, chicken and sweet potato all week long. And it's really efficient. People are saving tons of money on their grocery bills, right? Because if it calls for a bell pepper, you're going to use the whole thing, right?
Wow.
And they're getting time back, time, money, energy, all the good things.
This is revolutionary. Okay. Now that the book is out in the world and now all of your readers are making meals, what are you hearing back from them that they're just like, "Oh my God, this is the best thing ever"?
Oh, it warms my heart. Like, I can't even tell you. Yes, I got a message not too long ago from a lady, and this is just an example. And man, it just fills my cup. If you're listening and there's somebody that, has put out something that you really respect or value and it has made a difference in your life, and it seems silly sometimes to take the time to send a note to them, but do it. It really is meaningful to that person. So this lady sent me a note and she said she's been using Cook Once Eat All Week. There's 26 weeks of this meal prep in here in this book, right? With shopping lists and prep days, instructions, yada, yada. And she said that she'd been doing this method for 4 solid months, right? And so she's a little over halfway through the book. She has 4 children, and the youngest is under a year. And she said that they are now saving over $80 a month. They have to be very regimented about their budget. Over $80, a week on groceries because of using this method. Yes, she's now reduced the time she's in the kitchen by between 4 and 5 hours. She seems one of these people that tracks everything.
I'm like, wow, it's impressive.
I really admired her stats. Yeah, I was like, wow, I'm not that organized. And so she got all this time back. She's saving $80 a week, and she said it's made cooking more fun. I'm less stressed out. Everyone's eating really well and really happy. She goes, but starting in a few months, my daughter's going to be able to go to Mother's Day out because of the money that we're saving on our groceries, which is going to make everything easier and better for our lives. And I was crying reading this message. So it really has been incredible. I didn't expect it to be that impactful. I was hopeful that it might be useful to a few, and it's really blown me away.
Wow. That is awesome. Okay. Will you walk me through just like an example of one week?
Yes, I would love to. Okay, so there's a week, there's chicken and broccoli and sweet potatoes. That was an example I used before, but we'll go ahead and use it. And so what we'll do is whatever day that you like to meal prep, a lot of folks will meal prep on a Sunday afternoon, right? So I just usually think of it as a Sunday. And what we do is you choose this week, and you say, okay, my family can get behind these 3 ingredients. Everyone's going to be happy with this. We give you your grocery shopping list. So you go grab this stuff. A lot of people will order their groceries or pick up because it's already organized. We also wrote the grocery shopping list. I just think this is a funny note. We wrote them, and the editor organized them in alphabetical order. And I was these ingredients. I was like, oh, no. Because when people go to the grocery store, they don't shop by alphabetical ingredients. We shop by sections. And so it was a huge undertaking, but we rewrote it so that it's in order of the grocery store. So you get your stuff, you get your groceries, and you come home, and let's say if it's this chicken, broccoli, and sweet potato, I'm going to have you stick this prep day. These detailed instructions are written so that your time in the kitchen is as efficient as possible. I want to make sure you're getting the most bang for your buck in terms of your time. So we're like, put the chicken in first. And then while the chicken is roasting, go ahead and rinse off those sweet potatoes and then stick those in under the chicken, right? We came up with oven temperature so that you could cook multiple things at once and get great textures. And then we're going to have you whip up a couple sauces while those 2 are cooking, steam the broccoli, the other half of the broccoli we're going to rice. Okay, so maybe essentially just turn it into little bitty pieces that we're going to mix in, hide it into a casserole. And then what you can do is you would then store up, the chicken's cool, you cut up the breasts into cubes. We pull off the legs and the wings because we're going to use those as a sheet pan dinner. And then what you can do is you can store all your parts and pieces that you've already cooked and be done with your prep for the day. We shoot for about an hour to an hour and a half of total time. Or you can go ahead and make those meals to completion. And that's usually how I follow the book, as I make these things. Especially for my husband, if I'm traveling, I travel a good amount, and that way I can just say meal 1, meal 2, meal 3's in the refrigerator. And so then you assemble them. So let's say one of these weeks is a buffalo chicken casserole. So you take the chicken that you've already cooked, toss it in a really quick cheater buffalo sauce, and you put it over mashed sweet potatoes, maybe with some crumbled bacon on top. You bake it to have the flavor and the temperature come back together. Garnish it with some green onion, and dinner's ready to go. And then when you're ready to make meal number 2, let's say it's a chicken teriyaki bowl. So maybe we're not using the sweet potato tonight. Maybe we want to use rice or a cauliflower rice. We have grain-free substitutions in the book and dairy-free substitutions. So you make that. We toss the chicken in this really quick teriyaki sauce. And then for night 3, it's going to be a balsamic mustard sheet pan dinner, right? So we toss those legs and those wings and this mustard balsamic sauce, and the oven re-crisps them so you don't feel like you're eating leftovers. The broccoli is really delicious. And then you're ready to go and you ate everything, right? And that's so satisfying for anybody who's gone grocery shopping and you find sad carrots in your carrot drawer later on that you forgot about. Everything that you're shopping for is going to get used.
That is so crazy because you're describing things that sound so intensive and like planned and special, but you're basically saying it's like an hour and a half prep day. And then what the following days are what? It sounds like 15, 20 minutes?
That's the goal. Yes, no more than 15 minutes of active time. So for folks, let's say if you're a working mother and you get home with the kids, instead of spending an hour to cook dinner to feed your family, you get to spend that time with them or spend that time however you want, folding the laundry, spending some time with your spouse, whatever it is.
Now, what about you became a mom? You have a 1-year-old, is that right, Grayson?
She's 2 now.
2,
yep.
Okay. So 2-year-old. And has that changed really how you cook and how you've approached this? Because you started off kind of single, got married, now have a 2-year-old. How has that changed your own habits and how you help other people?
Oh, it has changed a lot. I actually feel like I've become more selfish with my time now that I do have a daughter, and I'm a working mother, right? And so my time is split. And when I'm home, I want to be home with her, right? I don't really want to be spending, whereas before I could romance over the perfect pot roast and have a glass of wine, and cooking dinner was a really big activity. But while my daughter's so young, and maybe we'll get back to that, right? And there are still some nights that will cook something really special like that for our family. But while my daughter's so young, she wasn't interested in hanging out in the kitchen with me. And instead, she's just grabbing my pants and saying, "Mama, baby shark," right? And so I just became really selfish with my time. And because of that, I became selfish on behalf of my readers' time. Because if I'm going through this, there's no way I'm the only one. And we all need a better solution.
I love that. Okay. You are joy. I mean, you are like, just when I got on with you, I'm like, oh my word, she's joyful. You're very grounded and mature just in how you don't talk in extremes. And I can tell you're really self-aware. You're obviously extremely talented. Where are you wanting to take your career? Because it feels like there's a lot of options now for people in kind of this blogger space. It's like YouTube, TV. Where do you want to go? What are some of your goals for the year?
Oh, that is so nice of you to say. And I don't know if you ever dig into Enneagram stuff, but talking goals is my jam.
You a 3?
I'm an Enneagram 3.
Okay. I'm a 7, which also explains why I'm like, oh yeah, I just want to eat and be merry all the time. Okay. Okay, good. Then you really don't even have to think about this question because you have got a plan.
No. Yes, I'm trying to pick which version I give you. I'm just kidding. So 2020 holds a lot of really cool things. I feel like this is the year that a lot of things really click into place. You know this, but building a business is a marathon. And I have had my eye on this hope and dream of evolving Fed and Fit from a personal blog into a really robust online editorial that way is beyond me. And so I've got this great team of incredible content creators and writers that now I get the privilege of working with at Fed and Fit. And as it sits right now, there's 5 of us. And so we have an office building that we're moving into in a few months with a studio kitchen. And so we're going to be doing more video that I get to do while the team continues to write great content. I want to feature them on video and highlight their brilliance in the kitchen and their really wonderful problem solving. So we're going to move more towards this team centric. Here are the people behind Fed and Fit making it all happen. So that's a big goal and a big vision of mine. And video is definitely going to be a huge part of that. But I really have always tried to keep my finger on the pulse of what will serve our readers best. And I truly, really try not to be too bullheaded about, some of my goals and my plans and my specific ideas, because if they don't want necessarily to see me cooking dinner, maybe they want more helpful, shorter tutorials. And we're going to try to stay nimble so we can provide that. But definitely some video content. We're going to try to do a live audience for some of these. We're going to break it up into seasons so everybody can live their life in phases, of the business. We have another book that we're developing, and then I'm having another baby in a few months. So everything's
so much fun.
Just wild. Yeah.
So much fun. Well, you're made for video. I mean, so that's awesome. And I love that there's so many ways now that consumers can get videos.
It is really neat. Yes. I was telling my parents, I was like, we're going to do a show in 2020. And my mom and dad are like, what network? And I was like, oh, no. YouTube.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild.
Yes.
The options that it's created. I mean, on one hand, the options means that you kind of have to really be good in order to break through the noise and have this following. But on the other hand, it creates this opportunity where you don't have to be like the one person on the Food Network,
Yes.
That is super
exactly.
exciting. Okay. And then how would you
Thank
of describe that vision of that show? Like when you say, how would you describe Fed and Fit?
Oh, man. Well, Fed and Fit in general, we try to be a no rules wellness resource. And so anything that you're going to find on the website is we try to write things with love and grace and give people space for customizing, right? We call coming up your own rule book with your body, right? If that's a foundation for our brand, we try to carry that off into all of our things. Here's some advice maybe on ways to roll over the cleaning products you're using in your house to less toxic options. And then provide a space for the folks who just don't care about that, right? And just acknowledge those kinds of things and those decision processes. So we try to be a no rules wellness space. And then the show, I think that we tend to take ourselves too seriously in the kitchen, or a lot of folks do. Or there's a lot of precision. People are afraid, let's say, to cook salmon, sear salmon on the stove because it seems really intimidating. And I think there's something to show a little Julia Childs vibe, right? It's okay if you goof it up a little bit. It's still dinner and it's still going to taste great. And so I really like this idea of cooking dinner with a friend and inviting somebody in that I can help walk through the process.
Oh my gosh. I want you to come to my house and cook with me in my kitchen.
I would love that.
You would love my kitchen. I think of Enneagram 3s, like they like gold stars. And I think of 7s as more of like, no rules, like let's create our own rules. So how did you come to this place of no rules and kind of embracing a little bit more of a, gentler way to be an ambitious woman?
Oh man, probably because I figured out that that's the way I'm going to succeed. That if I actually if I realize that most of our life is lived in the margins, and I just give that space and permission to be okay with that, to be okay with, I don't know, like not always having a grade or a benchmark that I'm chasing, and I just get to live joyfully and happily. And it all also, of course, has to do with the fact that I'm just trying to do my best to glorify the Lord in all of my work. But I think that's a big piece of it is there's most of our life happens in the margins, right? It's between work and bed. It's in the morning when you wake up. It's how you interact with your spouse and how you talk to your parents. And I think it's just so important that how we approach life gets the most of our attention. And so that's how I kind of figured that out, is that if we're so consumed with rules, we might forget how we're supposed to show up.
I love that, the in-between moments. I was just having breakfast with a friend of mine, Jamie Ivy. She has a podcast called the Happy Hour Podcast, and we are both we have goals and we are ambitious. And we were talking though about the importance of letting go of a point of arrival.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've listened to this podcast called the Happiness Podcast, and they've done all this research to say that we over project how happy we're going to be when we get to this certain place. So maybe when we've achieved this goal, we way over project that. And there's even thresholds that they have found in these psychological studies that show, like, once you make this amount of money, you can't be happier after that, and they even talk about people who won the lottery who have actually gotten depressed, And then we underproject what we're actually, the hard things that we're able to face in life. We often think there's no way I could ever go through something like that. But then once we're in that moment, we have our coping strategies, we have our reframing that we lean into, our communities. But when we're projecting that in the future, we're not like also activating our coping mechanisms. So I love that because our life is now. I mean, it is now. It's not in the future. So if you don't start embracing your present and realizing this is the moment that I have, this is my in-between moment, and bringing joy to that space, then you're going to miss your life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And those moments hit you when you're asleep at night, and I would get into bed and I think, I'm so grateful for my husband, for example, and he's already asleep, and I roll over. I'm like, I'm grateful for you. And he's like, ugh. But I think it's just nobody's perfect in that. I don't know that there's a gold star waiting for us when it comes to living with intention in those moments, or in all of our moments, or in trying to stay present. But if you can tap into it whenever you can, that's a good thing.
I love it. Okay, we would like to wrap up and ask all of our guests how they are going scared right now. So how are you going scared? Which we just say that courage is just simply being a bit afraid and going anyway, not letting fear hold you back, but just realizing that you got to walk through your fears in order to live your purpose.
Ooh, okay. Well, we're hiring again, so we're bringing on somebody else. This business is, if you start a business by yourself and you have ultimate control over everything. And I'm a bit of a recovering perfectionist. And so I think that giving up more control and seeing the conflicts that arise that are so good and interpreting them as good at the end of the day and learning with my team, that is my definitely going scared, as I'm about to have another baby, and we build a great maternity leave at our company, and stepping back and letting my team shine. It's something that does, when I first had my daughter, it made me very nervous, and this go around, I'm much more calm because I know the people in the group, and I also just know that it's going to be okay, but it doesn't mean that I'm not a little scared of it. And so as we're building this office studio, we're going to do a YouTube show at some point in time, right? And we're going to do something live, and we're going to evolve all of these things. I don't really know exactly how the details are going to fall into place. And I know I'm not going to be able to do it alone. And so it's a scary thing to really rely on a large group of people, but it's going to happen. It's the only way it's going to happen.
So good. Head on over to Instagram because Cassy and I are doing a fun little giveaway of her cookbook and some Noonday, and all sorts of little fun things are happening over there. And don't forget to subscribe to my email list. One of the conversations we have coming up is with my architect and my designer, where we are going to reveal all the behind the scenes of what it took to remodel our 1960s home in East Urban Austin. I can't wait for you to hear this conversation, but the people who are going to get to actually see the reveal first are the people on my email list. So head on over to jessicahoniger.com. That's 2 G's and 1 N. Subscribe to my email list, or you can just click on subscribe over on my Instagram account. I can't wait to show you everything. It's been really hard to keep it all a secret. Our wonderful music for today's show is by my good friend Ellie Holcomb. Going Scared is produced by Eddie Kofoltz. And I'm Jessica Honiger. Until next time, let's take each other by the hand and keep going scared.